So it is a Tuesday morning. You are at work, and your coworker just left their dirty coffee mug in the sink again for like the fifth time this week.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. Or maybe you're at a family gathering and a relative is just being completely indifferent to a plan you've spent weeks organizing. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you feel your blood pressure spiking.
Yeah, that sudden rush of heat.
Exactly. You get disproportionately, overwhelmingly furious to the point where you spend your entire commute home having these elaborate imaginary arguments with them.
Oh, the shower arguments. We all have those.
Yes. You're standing in the shower, rehearsing exactly what you should have said. It just completely hijacks your entire afternoon. Your whole emotional state is just shot.
It really is a universally human experience, that
Yeah.
physical sensation, that tightness in your chest over something that is objectively pretty minor.
Yeah.
But the source material we're diving into today offers this completely radical diagnosis for why that actually happens.
Hmm.
The intense frustration you feel in that moment, it has absolutely nothing to do with a lazy coworker
Wow.
or the relative.
Wait, really? Nothing at all?
According to this text, no. We are looking at a philosophical essay by Wufeng. It's from September 29th, 2024, and the translation was edited by Qin Yu. And it says that your anger is simply a symptom.
A symptom of what exactly?
It's a blaring psychological alarm bell. It's telling you that you have either forgotten your life's ultimate goal or, and this is the harsh part, you never actually had one to begin with.
Wow, okay, that is a heavy diagnosis. So the essay is titled Forget Your Goal and You'll Sink into the Mire. And it really is this uncompromising look at human anxiety.
Uncompromising is definitely the right word for it.
Yeah. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this psychological and philosophical framework. Now, the author brings up some highly specific spiritual doctrines, but we want to make it clear we're analyzing these impartially.
Right, we're looking at them as psychological tools.
Exactly. We want to understand the architecture of this belief system. Like, how does setting an almost impossibly grand goal change the way a human being processes daily friction?
Well, the author builds this framework by starting with a core thesis on human nature. Su Feng argues that a life without a goal is just inherently weighed down.
Burdened by trivial things, right?
Yeah, trivial worries, suffering, everyday conflicts.
Ugh.
He actually describes it as living in a constant state of vulnerability. Like you are haunted by fears that will shadow you for your entire life, simply because you lack a larger horizon to put those fears into perspective.
And the text pushes that even further, doesn't it? Because it's not just about not having a goal.
Right. It claims that even if you do possess a goal, but you let yourself get distracted along the way, maybe by fame or personal gain or just the overwhelming nature of daily chores, you fall into what he calls the mire.
The mire, like a swamp.
Exactly. It's this thick, sticky mud of jealousy, comparisons, anger, rivalry. And once you are stuck in that mud, achieving harmony with the people around you becomes virtually impossible.
Because you're just thrashing around in the mud with them.
Yeah, the psychology behind this mire is actually fascinating when you consider how the human brain allocates attention.
Oh, how so?
Well, when you lack a guiding star, your immediate surroundings become your entire universe. Your brain is wired to seek out and solve problems.
Right. It always needs a job to do.
Exactly. So if it has nowhere grand to focus its energy, it hyperfixates on the microenvironment. Every minor slight, every perceived unfairness, every dirty coffee mug takes on this massive existential importance.
Just because there's nothing larger in your psychological landscape to dwarf it.
You nailed it.
You know, it makes me think about walking through a massively crowded, bustling city market. Like, there are bodies everywhere, people carrying heavy bags, tourists just stopping randomly in the middle of the walkway to lick their phones.
Oh, the worst.
Right. And if you were just aimlessly wandering through that market without any specific destination, every single person who bumps into your shoulder feels like a personal attack.
Because you have nothing better to focus on.
Exactly. Every person who cuts you off is a major annoyance. You get frustrated, you puff out your chest, maybe you even snap at a stranger. You are entirely at the mercy of the crowd's friction because you have no overriding purpose to contextualize it.
Your entire cognitive load is dedicated to reacting to the obstacles. So the obstacles literally become the journey.
Yes. But imagine you're in that exact same crowded market, dealing with the exact same oblivious tourists, but your train leaves in 4 minutes.
Oh, that changes everything.
It's the last train of the night. Missing it means you are stranded. Suddenly, your goal is crystal clear. When someone bumps into you now, you do not stop to argue with them.
You don't have the time.
Right. You don't get consumed by resentment. You barely even register the physical impact. You just weave around them, maybe throw out a quick apology yourself, and keep moving. Your entire focus is locked onto catching that train. The destination makes the obstacles entirely irrelevant.
That is a perfect illustration of the central mechanism here. It really brings to life one of the most counterintuitive quotes from Soe Feng's essay. He says, "The grander the goal, the lighter life feels. The more short-sighted the goal, the more burdensome life will be."
Which, I mean, that completely flips our conventional wisdom on its head, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. We usually speak about grand goals, like writing a novel or making a massive career change or seeking enlightenment as these heavy, massive burdens we have to lug around.
Yeah, the narrative is usually all about the crushing pressure of high expectations, the weight of ambition.
But the author suggests we have the physics of ambition completely backward. A grand goal is not a boulder you carry on your back. It's more like a hot air balloon lifting you above the maze.
Oh, I like that.
The friction of the maze, the arguments, the fragile ego, the constant need for validation, that is the actual heavy burden. The grand goal liberates you from caring about the maze at all. The cognitive unburdening happens because the goal naturally filters out all that noise.
Okay, so if a grand goal makes life lighter, we have to look at what a truly grand goal actually constitutes in this framework. Because we are not talking about, like, a 5-year corporate career plan here,
No, definitely not.
or saving up for a vacation home. The text gives us this highly specific, vivid model to illustrate the ultimate focal point. It introduces the concept of a Changyuan celestial.
Right. And the essay uses the life of a Changyuan celestial to demonstrate what happens when a goal is pushed to its absolute metaphysical limits.
So what does that actually entail?
A Changyuan celestial operates with two unshakable objectives. The first is experiential, right here in the present, to experience joy, freedom, happiness, and bliss.
Isn't that pretty good so far?
And the second is existential and transcendent, to extend their life into specific, higher dimensional realms. The text identifies these realms as the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, or the Celestial Islands continent of Elysium.
Okay, so I have to jump in here because I can imagine you, the listener, navigating a stressful morning commute, hearing about the Celestial Islands continent of Elysium, and wondering, how does this metaphysical concept offer any practical utility for dealing with my difficult boss?
It does sound like a massive leap, doesn't it?
It sounds like pure escapism. If we are trying to solve daily anxieties, relying on a 10,000-year transcendent realm feels like we are just tricking ourselves into ignoring reality.
And that skepticism is entirely warranted. But look closely at how a belief structure of this magnitude actually functions psychologically. We don't need to validate the literal geographic reality of these celestial realms to see their immense utility.
Right, like we said at the top, we're looking at the psychology of it.
Exactly. It's an issue of contrasting scales. If your genuine, deeply held goal is to reach a transcendent state of eternal bliss in a higher dimension, your brain is forced to evaluate the present moment against a 10,000-year timeline.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where you're going.
When you scale your perspective to eternity, the sting of being passed over for a promotion at a mid-level marketing firm mathematically approaches zero.
It just disappears. The sheer scale of the goal eliminates decision fatigue. You no longer have to evaluate every temptation or slight on its own merits. You don't have to agonize over the pros and cons.
The text explicitly states that with a goal this grand, life becomes straightforward. You naturally avoid deep connections with people whose paths contradict your goals.
You just ignore the distractions.
You won't follow divergent paths, no matter how materially appealing they are. A path could be lined with immense wealth, fame, promises of prestige, and you will literally just walk past it.
Because it's a detour.
Purely pragmatic within this belief system. Those things do not lead to the Celestial Islands. So the goal acts as this universal, automated filter for all human decision-making.
It sets an ultimate boundary. Like, if you are an Olympic athlete training for the gold medal, you don't stand in your kitchen at midnight debating whether to eat a box of donuts.
Right. The goal has already made the decision for you.
But, creating an emotional shield against strangers or ignoring abstract temptations like wealth, that's kind of the easy part.
It is.
The real stress test for this philosophy isn't the crowded market or the corporate ladder, it's your own living room. How does this radical detachment survive when the person driving you crazy is someone you are morally obligated to care about?
Yeah, applying this to our most intimate relationships brings us to what is undoubtedly the most challenging rule presented in the text. Xu writes, simply and bluntly, do not try to change others.
Do not try to change others.
And the application of that rule is intense. The essay states that everyone has their own life path, and trying to change someone else is a fundamentally thankless task.
It goes even further. It delivers this incredibly stark line. Let those bound for heaven go to heaven, and those destined for hell go to hell.
It's a jarring statement.
We really have to pause and wrestle with that, because it violates almost every modern instinct we have about intervention, empathy, and care. If someone you deeply love is heading down a path of self-destruction, human nature dictates that you intervene.
Of course. The loving action is to pull them back.
Right. So the idea of witnessing their descent and just throwing up your hands because it distracts from your personal spiritual goal, it feels incredibly cold, maybe even selfish.
It absolutely challenges our contemporary understanding of compassion. But to understand the author's position, we have to look at the psychological mechanics of why intervention so often leads to mutual suffering.
Okay, lay it on me.
The text uses a grounding analogy to explain this dynamic. It advises the reader, allow a carrot to remain a carrot and a cabbage to remain a cabbage.
A cabbage and a carrot.
Think about it. If you possess a cabbage, but you have decided it needs to be a carrot, you could spend your entire life yelling at it, manipulating it, losing sleep over it.
Crying because it won't turn orange.
Exactly. But the cabbage is simply doing what is in its nature to do. It is existing as a cabbage.
So trying to turn the cabbage into a carrot is not the cabbage's problem.
It is entirely your problem. The text is very explicit about this. It's a realization about the limits of human agency and the insidious nature of the ego.
The ego. How does ego play into trying to help someone?
Well, when we attempt to fix our loved ones, we construct this narrative that we are acting out of pure, selfless love. But this essay strips that narrative away. It suggests that you are actually acting out of ego projection.
Oh. You think you know what's best for them.
You are operating under the assumption that your specific path or your definition of a good life is the objectively correct path for them. You cause yourself suffering because they refuse to comply with your vision of the universe.
Man, that reframes the entire concept of family frustration. But anger I feel toward my relative isn't actually because they are broken. It's because my ego demands control over their narrative. I am demanding they be a carrot when their fundamental nature is cabbage.
Precisely. And the author cements this with a popular saying quoted in the text. Those who can change themselves are wise. Those who try to change others are foolish.
So it's a warning.
A warning against turning yourself into a fool. The moment you take on the impossible task of altering someone else's fundamental nature, you dive headfirst back into the mire. You become consumed by quarrels and resentment, which completely derails you from your grand goal.
Okay, so let's transition this into practical application. Because if we accept this premise, if we acknowledge that we cannot change the cabbages in our lives and that our desire to do so is rooted in ego, how do we physically interact with them on a daily basis?
Because you still have to share a kitchen with them.
Exactly. You still have to work with them or sit across from them at a holiday dinner. How do you maintain this boundary without building a massive cold wall of resentment?
Well, the essay anticipates this exact friction and outlines clear behavioral applications. The first step is internal. If you see someone heading down the wrong path, you must actively refuse to let it burden you.
You just acknowledge their trajectory.
You let them do as they will, and you shift your focus entirely to living responsibly and within your own means. That's the internal boundary.
And the external.
The second step is external, It advocates for a practice of radical, unattached generosity.
Unattached generosity. Give me an example from the text.
It uses the example of a shared household. It says that when you prepare food, you should share it with the people around you gladly. But, and this is the key, if they do not share with you in return, you must let it go calmly without a shred of anger.
Wow.
If you are busy working while they're sitting around completely idle, you do not allow yourself to feel jealous or frustrated. You focus entirely on your tasks, and you let them focus on their idleness.
Okay, you know what this makes me think of? Think about this in the context of an online multiplayer video game.
Oh, I love video game analogies. Go for it.
So imagine you've chosen to play the healer class in a game. Your designated role is to cast healing spells, manage resources, and keep your team alive. You load into the game, and within minutes you realize the other players on your team are completely incompetent. They're slacking off, they're running directly into enemy fire, completely ignoring the objective.
The instinct for most players in that scenario is to get furious, turn on the microphone, and scream at their teammates to play better.
Absolutely. The instinct is to try and force them to change their behavior. But applying Xu philosophy to this changes your entire locus of control.
Because you chose the healer class.
Exactly. Your grand goal is to execute that role to the absolute best of your ability. So you just keep casting your healing spells. You heal the player who keeps running into the wall.
Even though they're playing terribly.
Yes. You manage your resources flawlessly. You do this not because your teammates are playing well and not because they deserve it. You do it because it is your role. Your performance, your generosity, and your virtue are entirely detached from their chaos.
That analogy perfectly captures the internal mechanism of unattached generosity. You are maintaining an internal locus of control. Your actions are dictated by your own standards, rather than being reactive to the external environment.
It's incredibly empowering, actually.
It is, and the essay takes this a step further by introducing a philosophical safety net to help you maintain this profound detachment over long periods. Because it's exhausting to just keep healing the guy running into the wall.
Yeah, eventually you'd burn out.
So it instructs the reader to leave the ultimate reckoning to the universe.
The idea that the universe will inevitably settle all accounts.
Exactly. It relieves you of the cognitive burden of hypervigilance. You no longer have to be the referee of your relationships. You don't have to keep a mental scorecard of who cooked dinner more times this month or who apologized last.
The universe is keeping score, so I don't have to.
Right. Your only job is to conceptualize yourself as a celestial being who is maintaining their virtues, even when surrounded by what the text calls mere mortals.
Okay, conceptualizing yourself as a celestial being among mere mortals. We have to examine that framing, because on its surface, that sounds incredibly arrogant.
Oh, it absolutely does.
It sounds like a superiority complex designed to just look down on everyone around you.
It can easily be misinterpreted that way. However, within the structural logic of the essay, this framing isn't about developing an ego-driven superiority complex. It is a mechanism for emotional insulation.
Emotional insulation.
It's a cognitive strategy designed specifically to prevent you from getting pulled into the mud wrestling of petty slights. You contribute selflessly because you trust the long-term architecture of your goal.
You aren't worried about immediate gain or loss.
Exactly. The text promises that one day, if you maintain this unwavering focus, you will reach your celestial world. And from that ultimate vantage point, you will look back and you will clearly see the limitations of those who once brought you distress.
You will finally understand why the cabbage had to be a cabbage. The ultimate perspective completely removes the immediate pain.
The broader the perspective, the smaller the grievance.
Man, we have covered some incredible and honestly challenging ground today.
We really have.
We began with that visceral, deeply relatable experience of disproportionate anger over a dirty coffee mug, and we traced it back to Sui Feng's diagnosis, that this pain is the direct result of lacking a life goal.
A lack of a horizon.
Right. Which shrinks our world and forces us into a mire of trivial conflicts. And then we examined the Chanyuan celestial framework, discovering how aiming for a massive 10,000-year transcendent reality acts as a psychological filter, making daily friction incredibly light.
And we also confronted the most difficult application of this philosophy, our loved ones.
Yeah, the cabbages and the carrots.
We analyzed the ego-driven folly of trying to turn cabbages into carrots and the absolute necessity of releasing our demand to control the paths of others.
Finally, we outlined the practical strategy of radical, unattached generosity, playing the healer class without keeping score, and relying on the universe to balance the scales.
Distilling all of these mechanisms down, the ultimate thesis of Sui Feng's essay reveals a profound observation about human suffering and freedom.
Which is?
The author argues that those who live the most freely, confidently, and brightly are those who have systematically dismantled their ego, their selfishness, and their attachment to outcomes.
It really is all about ego.
It is. Conversely, all the trouble, the pain, the anxiety we experience daily is simply the result of a strong ego colliding with the lack of a grand life goal. When you don't have a destination, you become obsessed with yourself.
And that self-obsession is the very thing that tortures you.
Exactly. It serves as an uncompromising mirror for our daily frustrations. And the text leaves the reader with one final striking instruction that summarizes this entire philosophy. Let the dead be, let the living live, just keep climbing toward your goal.
Just keep climbing toward your goal. It really is a demand for absolute, unwavering focus. And so, we want to leave you, the learner, with a provocative thought to carry with you today. I want you to think back to the scenario we opened with. Visualize the person who frustrated you the absolute most this past week.
The lazy coworker? The indifferent family member?
The person who made your blood boil and hijacked your afternoon. If the psychological framework we explored today holds true, if your deep resentment toward them is really just a blaring alarm bell indicating that you have lost your way in the maze, what is the personal grand goal you need to set for yourself right now, today, so that their noise simply fades into the background?
That's the real question.
Find the horizon that makes the bumps in the market irrelevant and let the cabbages be cabbages. Until next time, keep diving deep.